Alright, so we're going to start again from Chapter 5, Figure 5.31. Work our way through the rest of Chapter 5 here this evening. Hopefully at the end of that you'll really have a good handle on annotation, how to use dimensions, how to use temporary dimensions, things of that nature. So where were we? Constraining the model. Choices you make early in the design process, such as constraining a model, can either greatly benefit or greatly undermine the project's flow. As you gain more experience using Revit architecture, you'll start hearing the term over-constrained. This is a term for a model that has been constrained in so many places that any movement of the model forces multiple warnings, and in many cases errors that can't be ignored. Given that, how you choose to constrain your model is up to you. You'll learn how to constrain and, of course, unconstrain your model in the section, but deciding when and where to constrain your model will vary from project to project. You want to constrain things where you want to maintain relationships for whatever reason. For example, I always want this door to be centered in this wall. Then it should be constrained, so that if the wall changes in size, the door moves with it. Beyond that, you don't need to lock everything down. And there are some people who have a tendency to constrain and lock everything, and then it's like a straitjacket. You can't do anything with the model. You go to move a wall, and all of a sudden you get 47 warnings, and it crashes your computer. So, like with anything, there's a fine balance between how to use the tool and how to overuse the tool.
So is it more like exterior things that are more...
Nope, it kind of depends to you. But things like, I would lock my elevator shafts in place, right? I may constrain my elevator door to be in the center of the shaft. I may constrain office walls to be equal. It just depends on the specific situation and what you want the ultimate building to turn out like. I don't think there's any general rule of thumb where you always constrain this, or you never constrain that.
Just depends on the project.
It depends on the project and what you're trying to accomplish. So unconstraining the walls. The string of equal dimensions you now have in place have created a constraint with these walls. To unconstrain them, follow these steps. Select the dimension string. Press the delete key on your keyboard. We kind of went through this last time, right? But we'll go through it again. When I deleted that, what did I get?
Warning.
Yeah, I got a warning. And what have we said about Revit warnings? Yeah, take the time to read them. A dimension that has an EQ constraint is being deleted, but the elements will still be constrained. Push unconstrained to remove the constraint, or OK to leave the elements constrained. So I have a decision to make. I can either unconstrain the elements, which is probably why I chose to delete the dimension, or I can hit OK and it will leave them constrained. If you click the unconstrained button, the EQ dimension will disappear as well. Oh, hold on. So that's one way to do it. Delete the dimension. This warning will come up. You can either choose unconstrained or OK. I'm going to hit cancel and leave this the way it is. I can also come up here and I can just say they're not equal. I took the constraint off. I could now come in here and say, hey, I want this room to be this dimension at all times, and I could lock that dimension. And then when I go to move this, did it just make a liar out of me?
I think so. Warning comes up.
No. See, it didn't make a liar out of me. What did it do?
It tried to move the radius in.
It moved the exterior wall. That's probably not a good constraint to have in your model. And I got a big error here. So we're just going to hit cancel and go back to where we were. So I'm going to unlock that and go back to the book here. Keep moving forward in the book. Alright, figure 5.32. If you click the unconstrained, the equal dimension will disappear, as well as any constraints on the walls. If you move the exterior wall, the newly spaced walls won't reposition themselves. Item 4, click OK and you'll learn how to unconstrain these walls via a different method. We already did that. Item 5, select one of the interconnected walls that were part of the EQ dimension string. No, hold on, let me reconstrain this. Okay. So we'll select one of these interior walls. the EQ icon appears. Click it to release the constraint set for the wall. Not difficult, right? Basically, that's my constraint, one way or the other. Very simple, right? To toggle these things on and off. A lot of times people will forget that they have something constrained, and they will fight with it. And they'll try to move something, it won't move the way they want it to, and they'll be like, I don't know why it's not moving the way I want it to. Could simply be it's constrained. Alright. Okay, now that you've experienced with dimensions equality constraints, it's time to learn about a different type of constraint that involves locking items together at a distance. Locking a dimension. At times you may want to always hold a dimension, no matter what else is going on around it. You can do this by physically adding a dimension to an item and then locking the dimension in place. For example, if you want to lock the middle space to a specific dimension, you simply add a dimension and lock it down. Sounds easy. Item 1 on the annotation tab, click the align button. So we'll go to annotate, aligned, and we can go from here to here. Let's move this witness line inside and say that we always want this dimension to be 12 foot 3 and 11/16. We would simply just lock it. Now the relationship of those walls is always going to stay the same. Where might we use something like this?
Maybe existing buildings.
Existing buildings, ADA restroom stalls, or restroom stalls in general. If we know we want a specific space and we don't want somebody to accidentally move a wall and screw that up, we might lock it down. But be careful again about not locking everything in the world down, because you can really back yourself into a corner. Alright, that basically took us through the locking of a dimension. Kind of an oversimplification of the process, but I believe you all understand that. Alright, on to the next item of the book. We'll be out of here in no time. Alright, next item covered in the book, using dimensions to move objects. As I've mentioned, you can't type over a dimension and cause the value in that dimension to be inaccurate. Revit does provide a tool to get around this. When you add a dimension and select the object being dimensioned, the dimension turns blue. This is a temporary dimension, which can be edited. Consequently, the object being dimensioned will move. The goal of this procedure is to select an item and modify the temporary dimension and affect moving the object. Alright, so I'm going to put some doors in that aren't in here currently, so we can work with them. I'm going to do that by typing DR, dropping the door in, and this one I'm just going to copy multiple. And put that in we'll put it right here and then we'll mirror it because that's the way it looks like it's in the book. I'll type SE for snap end. Now this door I'm going to mirror, but I'm going to mirror by picking the axis, which is the center of that wall. And then I could select both of them by holding down the control key, and I could copy both of them, not doing it multiple, but just one copy from here to there. Actually I screwed up. Control Z. Let's do that again. Hold down Control and copy them from here. Skip that next wall so I'm not putting two doors in one room. Now there's any number of ways I could have populated those 5 doors. That's just one example. We just need a door that we can work with. It looks like the door they actually want us to work with is a door in this wall, so we'll add another door. And if it doesn't look like it does in the book, that's very simple to change, right? I can just hit these flippers. Flip that door, swing any direction I need it to flip. Alright, so back to the book. Item 1, zoom in on the left side of the west wing as shown in figure 5.37. Select the door. There's a blue dimension on each side of the door. These are temporary dimensions. I have this dimension. You see there's a temporary dimension on each side of the door. 20 feet 4 1/8 on this side, 1 foot and 3/4 of an inch on this side. Pick the blue text in the lower temporary dimension. The text might be obscured by the ball, but if you hover over it, it will activate. And then you can select. And we want to make this exactly 1 foot. And what you'll notice is it moved both of them. Now, are we going to tell the contractor we want it to be 20 foot 4 7/8 away from this wall over here? No, the actual dimension we'll give them will be from down here, a foot. Think again, how is the contractor going to lay that out in the field? We'll have a tape measure, right? How long is a typical tape measure? 25 feet. So, do we want to give them a dimension that's almost the entire length of their tape measure? When we can give them a dimension that's 1 foot? No. Do we want to give them this long dimension and then have them subtract the door opening and get this dimension over here using math? Probably not. So if we want to make sure this is exactly 1 foot in the actual field, we'll just come in here and we'll do an aligned dimension. Something like that. I know that's not in the book, but that would be enough information for the contractor to know where they should place that door. Do you agree or disagree? Agree, right? You're the contractor. Do you agree or disagree? That would be the information you would need. Or we could also give them a dimension, depending on the type of construction, to the center line of the door. Enough information for you to build it properly? Yes. But when we select it, even after we've put permanent dimensions, we're still going to get this temporary dimension. It's just a drawing tool at this point. So, I know that last week we kind of covered dimensions. Everybody's like, ooh, look, I can easily dimension all sorts of stuff. I can dimension an entire wall. One of the things I said is be careful with that because you can easily over-dimension a plan and not give the actual information that's needed, but give a bunch of erroneous information, which is just as bad as not having enough information. All right. Anybody have questions about how to use temporary dimensions to fix a door? Now over here, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with a permanent dimension. So I'm going to come in and say, that's a permanent dimension, right? I used it, I inserted with the annotate tab. Now I'm going to click on this. Alright, so here we have a permanent dimension, but if I click on the door, the dimension becomes small and blue. That means it's a temporary dimension at this point. We can type in 1, use it as a drawing tool. Makes sense. Very easy to use dimensions to actually input hard dimensions. So when I'm putting doors or windows in a plan, do I get super concerned about where I place them initially? No, I'm probably going to come back and make my adjustments using the temporary dimensions and the permanent dimension tools. And you notice I just did this by habit. This was up here like this, right? Which is all sorts of a mess. It's not clear. So just by habit, I moved this so that it was more legible. Here's the golden rule for drawings. If you can't read it, neither can the contractor. So if it's a jumbled mess, there's stuff laying on top of each other, it doesn't make sense, the contractor is not going to have it make sense either. And this is something that when you work in AutoCAD, all these lines are different colors. And people go, oh, I can see it because it's different colors. Do we print out colored drawings to give to the contractor? No, they're black and white. So all the contrast, all that layering goes away. Revit's a little bit different. It doesn't show us everything in colors. It shows us it in black and white. So it's in some ways easier to identify when you have text and things crossing each other. So just keep that in mind. We want to keep our plans concise, clean, legible. And if you do that, that will go a long way to improving your relationship with your contractor. All right, the next item is using dimension text overrides. So if I double click on this, it will open up this dialog box and it will let me add some information in here. But if I come in here and type 1 foot 1 inch, because I think I'm going to be smarter than Revit, and hit apply, what happens? It says, no, you cannot enter in text that conflicts with the actual dimension. Smart enough to know that you're trying to overwrite it. What you can do, I'm going to hit cancel here and pull out a bigger dimension string. What you can do on a dimension string such as this, you can say replace with text and type something in, like center, well, never lowercase, center of wall, this, it may not even let us put this 12 feet in here. Yeah, what I'm going to do is, we could replace the actual dimension, but we're going to use the value and put it above center line of wall. And we're going to hit OK. And what you'll see is that put center line of wall text above it. If I don't like where it's at, I can come in here and say I don't want it above my text. I want it below my text. Center line of wall. I can use that to add more information to my dimensions. It's actually a very handy tool. We could say, don't use that. Field verify. And now I have a dimension line with no dimension, essentially. I just have it with text that gives an instruction to the contractor. I want you to field verify the center line of the wall. And what will the contractor do with this? Promptly ignore it. And blame you when the dimensions don't come out the way they're supposed to. Okay, not every contractor, but oftentimes they fail to field verify things. So you guys will be able to work through 5.42, 5.43, 5.44 using that same dialog box and adding text to the dimensions. Very simple. So I'm going to move on to the next portion of the textbook, which is placing text and annotation. Text in Revit architecture is a love-hate relationship for every Revit user. You'll love text because it automatically scales with the view's scale. You'll hate it because the text editor is something of a throwback from an earlier CAD application. Either way, the procedure for adding text doesn't change with your feelings towards it. The objective of this procedure is simply to add text to the model, format it, and then add and format a leader. Okay, the text editor in AutoCAD is far more advanced than the text editor in Revit. And Revit's catching up every version, but typically in Revit, text is just difficult to edit. So there are some workarounds. You would think because Autodesk owns both Revit and AutoCAD that the text editors would be more similar, but they're not. Item 1, in the project browser, go to level 1 floor plan. We happen to be on level 1. Item 2, zoom in on the east wing's radial entry area where the elevator shafts are. So we're going to zoom back down here to the other side of the model. We're going to move on to the next item. Item 3, on the text panel, the Annotate tab, click the text button as shown in figure 5.47. So we go to Annotate, Text, click on the text button. Very easy. Now what you'll notice up here, there are 4 buttons. Essentially this is text with no leader. This is text with the leader that has 1 segment. Text with a leader has 2 segments, probably the most common tool you'll use. And then text with a curved leader. I don't like curved leaders, but that's really kind of a aesthetic call for you. And then there's some justifications here and how you want to justify your paragraph. All right. In the type selector, select text 330 seconds. All right, so let me pull properties over here so we can see what we're working on. 330 seconds. Excellent. On the format panel, you have a choice for a leader. For this example, click the no leader button. It's the button with the capital A on it, shown in figure 5.48. To place the text, you can pick a point or drag a window. Left click at a point marked 1 in figure 5.48. Keep the button down. Alright, so we're going to drag out a window basically. That brings up a little text box. And we can simply type in CMU shaft wall. If I click on that box and click on this button and move it, I can click on this button here and rotate the text. I can click on this button here and change the extents of my text box. You can see that the text starts to automatically wrap. I can even get it to wrap in ways that are really unhelpful, like that is almost illegible. You laugh, but I've seen people do that in drawings. Because it had to fit. They're like, well, I had to make it fit. Well, but if you made it fit at the cost of it being legible, that doesn't help. All right, so it asks us to select the text in order to add a leader. See, now these icons have changed a little bit, and it says plus. So we're going to add a leader. And you're going to see by default, it adds the leader with the ugliest arrow you've ever seen in your life. See how ugly that arrow is? All right. So in true Revit fashion, we can change that. But we have to change it by actually going into and editing the type. And you can see under here, under the edit type, the leader arrowhead can be any number of things. A dot, an arrow. I'm going to use a filled arrow of 15 degrees and hit OK. And you'll see this looks much more like a drafting arrow. That was relatively simple, right? If I needed to add a leader to the other side, I could. And you'll notice the arrowhead this time, because I changed the family type, is the same arrowhead. Obviously that arrow... Oops, what happened? Tried to delete the leader I just put in. So by doing that, I deleted all the text. In order to delete this leader, you have to click on the leader and then click on minus up there to get rid of it. So again, I deviated a little bit from the instructions in the book.
Where did you, I'm sorry, to delete the leader? Can you do that?
If you select the leader, click on this, and there's a button right up here that says minus leader, or remove last leader.
Oh.
Alright, now we're going to add some text with the leader starting. So we're going to come here to text. We're going to tell it right off the bat we want a 2-segment leader. And it's going to say, okay, click where you want your arrow, then click your elbow, and then click where you want your text to start. And then it's going to let you put the text in. So we'll type in full height wall. There you go. So I believe if you know you're going to put a leader in anyway, it's easier to start by drawing a leader. But if you put a bunch of text in there and then figure out that it needs a leader, it can always be added or taken away. That's the nice thing about Revit. You can almost infinitely modify what you're doing. So if you'll notice, I have a typo here, right? There's a spelling mistake.
Yeah.
There's a spell check in Revit. But no, it won't underline it like Microsoft Word. Like track your errors.
Yeah.
So I always tell people that I'm working with, make sure you run spell check before you send the drawings out. There's nothing more embarrassing than something that is misspelled, simple typo, because you failed to run spell check before you sent the drawings out. It's all about attention to detail at that point. Alright. So say this is not the text that I want to use. I don't like Arial. How would I change that?
Type select.
I would just simply change the type selector. What if they didn't have the type I wanted? Yeah, I could edit type and hit duplicate. And we can call this 3/16 Tomahawk. And hit OK. And then I have some things I can change in here. For example, I can change the font.
I can't do
And I can change the text size. And I want to keep the arrow the same way. Well, let me just go ahead and change the arrow. Why not? Let's make that a dot. Like a big fat dot, 1/8 of an inch. And I want to make this bold. I'm just changing options now to change options at this point. Show you that you can change them. With factor, I think they changed that to 0.8 in the book. We're going to hit OK. Now this text here is significantly different than this text here. Would you agree?
Yes.
I don't recommend that you use 47 different fonts in your projects. What you're going to do is you're going to set up a couple different text styles. Most likely it's really just going to be different sizes you want text to show up. So when we do sheets, the sheet number obviously is much larger than the date that's on the sheet. That would be two different text styles. They'll probably be the same font. One might be bold, one may not be bold. But you're probably only going to have 3 or 4 text styles that you set up unless you're trying to do something specific for a specific project. But we wanted to show you how do I edit a type to create my own font style, essentially. Editing types is something you will become very familiar with and hopefully comfortable with, because that's how you're going to change doors and walls and everything else. Everything is a type within Revit, and by this point we should all be understanding that nomenclature.